Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. Join me today. We're going to discuss the alliance between Google, payment processors, and gun grabbers to suppress and control conservatives ahead of the 2020 election. So this past week, you probably noticed that a whistleblower came out. This person, who was a Google employee, I think still is a Google employee, exposed the attempts from Google vis-a-vis YouTube to control not only what people are seeing, to effectively suppress conservative videos and what they deem as right-wing videos, but also have attempted to essentially train people's minds in the way that they think, with the search engines. I spoke about this in my newsletter for my $5 a month Patreon supporters this past week in detail. In short, this past week blew the lid off of what those of us who have been involved in YouTube creators as content creators have been seeing for a while. And that is that YouTube and its parent company, Google, is essentially suppressing any conservative thought. They are doing this knowingly ahead of the 2020 election because they are trying to essentially control the election, to thwart the mind, the voice, and the will of the electorate. Google is trying to retrain the electorate to vote the way that they want them to. And that is very troubling. That's very troubling for all the calls of fascism that the left has been labeling recently. I think that that's pretty clear when you have especially our oligarchical interests, these large companies and these cronies that are involved in these large companies dictating to the populace what they are permitted to think and what they should be thinking in their search engine queries. I think that's very troubling. This is not the first time that this has been talked about. I can tell you as a content creator that I have had numerous reports of people who have been unsubscribed against their will and definitely without their cognizance, have been unsubscribed from my channel, who have ceased receiving notifications despite repeatedly selecting to receive notifications. And that's problematic because in several of these cases, I know these individuals and they are not non-tech savvy. They are very much familiar with the navigation of YouTube. And nonetheless, they are being unsubscribed from my channel and they're not receiving notifications. And so in this whistleblower's video and in his testimony, it was made known that this is fully within the realm of Google's knowing, and that they are actively attempting to do this to control conservative thought and to suppress the voices of people who are libertarian, constitutional-minded, conservative-minded. At the same time, I want to point out that the weaponization of payment processors and people who are essentially third-party intermediaries between individuals who are purchasing services and between people who are providing goods to those services and goods purchased. The weaponization of payment processors is of particular concern, and I see all of these things coming together as a coordinated effort on the part of large and very powerful companies to thwart the will of the electorate, to control effectively the presidential elections, and to suppress the will, the free exchange of ideas, information, and speech, to suppress this from the conservative side of the House and from liberty and constitutional-minded people. When I am referring to this, I'm talking about payment processors like Square and like Stripe, Apple Pay, and there are certainly others, these third-party intermediaries who have refused to allow their services to be used in the transaction for firearms, which is, of course, the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is the right to keep and bear arms and to defend yourself, for sure, is a right. It is a constitutionally protected right. However, these companies have declared that their services are not going to be allowed. Their charging, if you will, is not going to be allowed for individuals to be able to purchase firearms to defend themselves, and that's a problem. PayPal has been notorious about this, and also about interfering with people who cover firearms related topics and firearms related services. This has been a problem for many years. The marriage of these two is troublesome enough because now we have weaponization of payment processors. We have essentially the blocking of conservative minded people from being able to spend and transact money freely. We also have at the same time the controlling of free speech and the controlling of the exchange of ideas. And the reason why Google has been able to get away with this, YouTube for sure, is because they have claimed the protection, the legal protection of both publisher and of platform. How they're getting away with this, I don't know, but I do know that this company has worked with the NSA in the past to hand over information on American citizens who have not been accused of any crime, but in blanket surveillance have cooperated with shadowy, definitely problematic entities within the federal government. And Edward Snowden talked about this. He blew the lid off of it. I have recently watched documentary Citizen 4, which I'll link to in the description box below. You can watch it on various different platforms, but that is the man's reason in his own word why he did what he did. And when you have the marriage of these tech companies just giving over data to emissaries of the federal government, I can understand then why they are getting the the look past when it comes to their abuses, really, of the legal protection of platform and publisher. So you've got these two things that are going on. Furthermore, you have the renewed call for gun control, definitely from the left, but let us not forget that under President Trump, we've had more gun control successfully enacted and advocated for and passed than anything under President Obama. This past week, I think it was this past week, very recently, Senator Julie Morrison of Illinois, in a town hall meeting that was, of course, stacked with a bunch of leftists anyway, with declared animosity towards firearms and an overt agenda towards advocating firearms confiscation. She just blanketly said that it wasn't good enough to advocate for registration of firearms, that she was all about confiscation. Illinois is facing its own set of issues right now, and the good news is that a lot of people are standing up to this. But the fact that this elected official was as brazen as she was in public, in a town hall meeting where she knew, of course, that she was going to be filmed and all this stuff, that she was brazen enough to outright say that she was going to advocate for gun confiscation, for firearms confiscation, for the trampling, of course, of the Second Amendment. These people don't care. All right? They don't care. They're not interested in you. They don't care about you. They want you dead. I would say that this is a problem because now you have the marriage of suppression of exchange of ideas, suppression of free trade, and now the threat of confiscation of an individual's ability to defend him or herself. All of this is leading up to the 2020 presidential election. All of this is happening, in my opinion, in concert to crush the political opposition. And the companies and the individuals, the organizations that are involved in this are using the protection of government and using the power of their very strong corporate entities to accomplish this. At the same time, we're seeing a rise in the prices of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and I think there's reason for this. I'm not giving investment advice, clearly, but I can tell you for sure why I think Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies may have a part to play in this for the positive. Okay. I was introduced to the concept of cryptocurrencies quite a while ago. I was very, very uncomfortable with it until I started seeing this weaponization of the third-party payment processors. You have to understand that in the internet world in which we live, and I know I have a lot of IT and cybersecurity folks who watch me, and so I'm putting this in the Barney-style baby steps for the average people, so feel free to expand upon it. But with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, you are essentially taking out the third-party intermediary between exchange of currency in payment for goods and or services and or donations, as the case may be. And so when we evaluate the payment processors and the political weaponization of payment processors, i.e. PayPal, Swipe, Square, all these people saying, no, we're not going to use our funds to transact your payment for firearms or firearms-related purchases, etc. When you look at the overt politicization of these third parties, you have to have, and the market, the free market, will always have an answer. Somebody will be creative and find an answer for these political woes that show up. Enter cryptocurrency. And the benefit with cryptocurrency is that you don't have that intermediary. You have a direct transfer from address to address, from essentially entity to entity, person to person, with the transfer of this currency online. Does it, of course, usher in its own problems? Absolutely. Is it volatile? Absolutely it is. However, when I evaluate, and I made this point in my newsletter, when I evaluate the historical enmity between freedom and security, I know which variable that I'm going to trust more. the free market, and definitely with cryptocurrency as an expression of freedom in the ability of individuals to transact money freely, the freedom has a cost, and that is volatility. And so a lot of people are, clearly very concerned about this, and they look at Bitcoin's historical ups and downs. But this is what I do know, okay? If we continue to rely on these groups who have alliances with wicked political positions and positions that essentially would put the boot on the neck of humanity, to control them, to control their ability to express themselves, to control their ability to purchase firearms or firearms related goods and services. I know which group to trust, and it's not these politicized third-party intermediaries. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I am extremely concerned, having had multiple conversations over the past couple of weeks with people who are a lot smarter in this than I am. And everyone, the commonality is that everyone whom I am discussing these issues with is gravely concerned about this net that's being drawn over the world for sure, and undoubtedly the American populace in the lead up to the 2020 presidential election. And I also, in the conversations that I've had with, again, very intelligent people who are not just an echo chamber for my own ideas, but who are free and thinking people, they are all recognizing that a hard kinesthetic war is coming here in the United States. And this is inevitable because we have ushered in a population where there is no consensus that can happen anymore. There's no compromise. In the words of Tevye from Fiddler on the Roof, there is no other hand. We have played ball consistently with the left and allowed them to progressively curtail and steal more and more of our rights away, as well as more and more of our money. And the tax revolt that I've talked about in past videos, I think that is inevitable. It's going to start probably incrementally, but that's going to happen. And I also see that there is a dialing back of tech. I think people are starting to realize that the Internet of Things and this progressive encroachment more and more and more of essentially a system which we have no hard control over into our lives, controlling things in our lives that are pretty critical, is not a healthy thing. So I see more and more liberty and conservative-minded people dialing back in their involvement with invasive technology. And then conversely, and perhaps paradoxically, I see more and more an adoptment of cryptocurrency from a liberty standpoint and from a principled standpoint versus an investment standpoint. If you're looking at cryptocurrency as an investment, I can think of a lot more safe things to invest in. However, if you're looking at cryptocurrency as a way to thwart the system as it is, and then also to have a free market and a free ability to transact value from person to person online, without the involvement of a potentially politicized third-party intermediary, I think that's probably going to end up happening. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. I'm very gravely concerned based on the whistleblower video and the testimony of this whistleblower in Google. I've known that it's happening for a long time, just on the back end here as a YouTube content creator. But I wanted to share this with you guys because there's a lot of things that we need to think about, and there's a lot of choices that we're going to have to make as to our involvement in a grid, in a system that is ultimately very, very weak and very politicized. So just some things to think about, I hope it was helpful for y'all today. If you enjoyed the video, I hope you'll subscribe to me here on YouTube and make sure that you click the notification button, because for whatever reason, a lot of people aren't getting them. So make sure you click the notification button. You can also support me on Patreon, as well as Subscribestar, and of course, cryptocurrency. I hope it was helpful for y'all. For now, it's ThePatriotNurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later.